Welcome to the Renegade Lifestyle Podcast with me, George Papp, seeking to empower you with practical strategies and information to exit the matrix by speaking to experts and individuals making a difference. Quick plug, check out our Renegade Lifestyle membership, get access to our monthly newsletter, live webinars, which is packed with insider and detailed content from the team and special guests. We also help you build your own freedom businesses, location independent incomes, improve health, spiritual growth as well as exiting the banks and making sure your funds are sort of outside of the system at this pivotal time in history. Our aim is ultimately to help you move away from a system that doesn't serve you, rise above the matrix, and become ungovernable. Kicking off part 2 of our Enlightened Birth series, I guess, we spoke to the guys at the symposium a couple of weeks back. Today we're joined by Nickita Starck, founder of When Push Comes to Shove, which is a self-proclaimed free-thinking maternity organization promoting alternative and holistic maternity care and education. Thanks for joining us, Nickita. How's it going?
Yeah, really good. Thank you, George. Thank you very much for having me.
No problem at all. We've been in discussions over the last few months because I'm also, I'm not expecting, but my wife is expecting. So we're expecting a child soon. So I've got your information from all your channels like YouTube, and I researched When Push Comes to Shove. Some of the stuff you're doing is really excellent, and I thought this would be valuable information for the people listening. And again, it's something that most people kind of overlook in this sort of side of things, in sort of freedom / moving away from the system. A lot of people kind of look over the sort of maternity care and births a lot. So I think it's an interesting topic to start discussing with you. So before we go into everything that you do, how did you get into what you're currently doing when push comes to shove? What's your story behind your journey to where you are now?
Well, I'd just like to mirror what you just said, really, with how people seldom actually go down this rabbit hole, which is, well, I hold my hands up to that. This is why I'm doing what I'm doing now, because I didn't go down this rabbit hole when I had my first baby 15 years ago. It's bizarre. You know, people spend a fortune researching and planning a wedding, what car to buy, um, but they don't do that for birth. And I think, like myself, 15 years ago, so many women fall victim to the fact that they think they have to give their birth over to the system and they don't know what they're doing, and they just trust the professionals to deal with them. Now, this is a very unempowering stance to have when it comes to taking responsibility for your health and for your pregnancy. And I understand why women do it, because we live in a fear culture and we're taught over and over again by looking at mainstream media and um, TV, films, that birth is the world's biggest disaster and it's inherently dangerous. This, of course, is not true. So I I came into this profession after the birth of my first daughter, and I had a very, very traumatic experience. The standard story you hear, how awful it is, and it was very over medicalized. I was told I was overdue, so I had to be induced, and I didn't question it. I thought, okay, that's what they're telling me. Now, interestingly, there was a my gut was going, don't do it, but I ignored it, which is what many people tend to do. So I was induced. I was only 21, and it was horrific. Long story short, I spoke to my grandmother shortly afterwards because I was so traumatized. And she'd had 8 children, and I thought, how did you do that? Because all this birth trauma that I experienced and I hear other people experience, it's all normal. Like, why would you do that? And she was a very, very wise Indian sage. And she said to me, my darling, what you've experienced is common, it's not normal. And that just had a light bulb go off in my head. And I thought, wow, okay, that's interesting. So I started my journey into the birth world. I briefly studied midwifery. and I didn't like it. I left very quickly, like bullets have left guns slower. Um, but I found it to be very over medicalized, a conveyor belt system. And what I thought midwifery was, it didn't look like that. They preached normality, but I found out very quickly that normality seldom happens. And that was 15 years ago. Well, no, 14. And now it's even worse. So I left that. I trained to become a doula, so to give practical and emotional support to women. But that kind of didn't feel where I needed to be. Um, so my job title kind of evolved. I'm not a doula, I'm not a midwife. I would call myself a traditional birth attendant. So I've had the privilege of learning from granny midwives, ancient traditional midwifery, and non-clinical midwifery. So that I've been very privileged to be able to be put in front of women who know this information, these skills, this ancient knowledge, and I've learned and I've grown with it, and now I teach it. And yeah, so I developed When Push Comes to Shove in 2020 after the birth of my second baby, because independent midwives lost their insurance, and I thought, oh, that's it. That's women's last chance for autonomy. So I developed this, and it's kind of evolved from where I wanted it to go. It's gone in a total different direction. I was never able to get the insurance midwives, but it has been done now through a company called Zest. But what I ended up doing was, instead of trying to fix the system, because the system does work perfectly well for the system, just not the women birthing inside it, I ended up creating a new one, because I really do believe there's no point in criticizing. You just have to create. So you don't want to focus your attention on the things that you don't think are right. You just do something totally different. And long story short, after just 2 short years, we've now got over 100, I think we're approaching 200 now, birth practitioners in 8 countries. I've trained 104 midwives, doctors, doulas in physiological birth, and we've been able to provide women and their families with incredible one-to-one care. And in fact, we just did our statistics for 2022, and the side-by-side comparison of what we are able to achieve with our method compared to the normal system is unreal. So, for example, I'm just reaching these numbers from the top of my head. I don't have them in front of me, so forgive me, I have a small margin of error. But I do know this one is a fact. 100% of our women have breastfed. 100%. 100% have had spontaneous vaginal birth, so they've gone into labour naturally. 74, I believe, 74% of women have had home births. 36% of women have had a free birth, so a medically unassisted birth. 78%, I believe, have had a physiological third stage, so no injection to get the placenta out. And so the statistics go on. I'm going to be publishing them soon when we launch the new website. But yeah, I'm very proud. And I think the difference is, it's not that the information itself is a byproduct of the underlying feeling of what we teach. And I center all my courses around spiritual and self development. And that feeling is love. So if you're teaching from a fearful standpoint, don't be surprised to see fearful responses and for it to keep showing up. But I make sure that when I teach, it's centered around love and understanding that you don't want to bring fear to a birth room. And I think if you equip women with those tools of trust, because we've been totally separated from our intuition, totally. We're in ego constantly, in fear. And if there's nothing for us to fear, they'll bloody find something for us to fear. So I think ultimately, if you strip back that fear, get out of ego and into trust, birth is much, much more likely to play out in a way that you would like.
Yeah, that's amazing stuff, really. And it's going back to what you said about it's common but not normal. It's kind of like what Krishnamurti said as a quote, like it's no measure of health to be well adjusted to a profoundly sick society. So
I
it's
love that.
like so it's like becoming just a norm, becoming like, just because it's common, it doesn't mean that it's actually healthy and normal. That it should be normal. It shouldn't really be normal most of the time.
Mm.
And like you said, also, it's better to build out of the current system, build away something better instead of just protesting or being angry at the system, because that's what it is, and you can't really fix it from the inside, in my opinion. So it's better to build outside of that in different sectors, such as health and like you're doing with birth. I think those things just need to be built externally, and naturally people will move to that because the results will prove itself, in my opinion.
Yeah, I think
Um,
it will evolve is in a conscious way. Those systems are all well and good, but you know, when the world's done with them, they will be done with them. I saw a very profound interview, and it was such a simple answer to such a simple question, but it really made me go. So, a woman who was 105 years old was being interviewed, and the interviewer asked her, "What's the key to longevity?" And she said, "Minding my own business." And I thought, yeah, of course it is. That makes spiritual sense. Because if you're poking your nose in all the time, this is wrong, this is wrong. It's like the metaphor of putting out a fire using another fire. That doesn't work. You just got to use water, or in this case, love. You just build something entirely different. It's like the comparison of people scrolling through social media and making nasty, horrible troll comments, and they're in their mum's basement covering Cheeto dust and stuff like that. But you think, well, why criticize when you can create? If you don't like what someone's doing, go and do something better.
yeah,
You
that
know?
energy is wasted
Yeah,
being angry at something that's wrong, but it could be done building something that's right, um,
sure.
in your own way. So yeah,
Yeah.
that's great. I think that you're definitely doing that, and I'm trying to do that myself here as well. Um, so going back to birth, so why give birth naturally? What are the benefits? Why would someone choose to do that, and what sort of consequences or things? What does that result in, basically, in a positive way?
Okay. Well, first of all, I think it would be good to just teach a little bit of birth physiology so you can understand the benefits of it. Um, we release a hormone in birth called oxytocin. It's your love hormone. You release it when you're making a baby too. I mean, just stroking your arm like this, it feels nice. It releases oxytocin, and that hormone facilitates your birth, which involves sending rich oxygenated blood to your uterus to facilitate contractions. And it also produces endorphins and this feeling of just indescribable euphoria. I'm sure many of you will have heard women saying after giving birth, you feel incredible and you forget the pain straight away, because that's the highest you'll ever be when you've given birth. If you've had a natural birth, that is. And when I say natural, I don't mean vaginal. I mean non-medicated. So I'm not saying the others is bad. Oh, do you know what? Let me just make a disclaimer because I feel this is really important. When push comes to shove, and myself have absolutely no interest in telling anyone how to give birth. It's none of my business. It's just your business. My business is showing you have options. So if you want to go and plan a cesarean section, you should absolutely do that because you should give birth in a setting and in a way that makes you feel safe. No one should coerce you. So you shouldn't be listening to someone saying, "No, you have to have a home birth." No, that's no one's business but yours. And and on the other hand, you don't have to listen to the system to tell you have to do it in a certain way. You should be empowered to make your own decisions. Then you're not going to experience a trauma. But anyway, going back to what I was saying. So oxytocin, it's a very shy hormone, and it's shy for a reason because our bodies are very finely tuned machines. So imagine that you were alive a few thousand years ago and you're wandering the tundra and you're about to go into labor, but you see a big, scary, toothy animal and you think, oh shit, that's about to eat me. So you get a signal to your brain that says, stop releasing oxytocin, release adrenaline. Adrenaline stops oxytocin from flowing and it fills your arms with blood and your legs with blood, ready to fight or fly. Now, if that didn't happen, you'd go into labor, you'd be paralyzed, and you'd be eaten. Now, what is the modern day equivalent of seeing a big toothy predator? It's adrenaline stimuli. So feelings are being observed, strangers, bright lights, hearing other women give birth, beeping machines, strangers putting their hand inside you. And then we get this awful phrase of failure to progress. Of course. Now imagine you were having sex with your partner and you're releasing this beautiful oxytocin and you're looking into each other's eyes and everything's going beautifully and you're just in this euphoric state. It's just you two. You're in a dimly lit room, candles, music. And then some dickhead opens the door, turns the lights on, walks up to you and says, "How are you getting on? I think you'll probably be able to get there yourself, but you might need our help, so we're just going to stay and watch." You tell me, do you think you'd be able to get back in that moment?
No.
So the same goes for birth. Babies are made in love and born in love. And the purpose of it, there's so many mechanical and biological processes to birth. But just to name one, we need the human microbiome. And method of birth is important. So first of all, when you're born and go through the vaginal canal, your lungs are given a good squeeze. And if that doesn't happen, all C-section babies are born with something called wet lung. So they can't squeeze all the stuff out of their lungs from the birth canal. Now, the second implication to a C-section will be the microbiome seeding. So when you pass through the vaginal canal, you swallow good gut bacteria and it gives your immune system a boost. That's essential. Then the second part is breastfeeding and skin to skin contact. That also helps the microbiome seeding. If none of this happens, you can look for yourself. There's a really good film called Microbirth. You can watch it on Amazon. So if you aren't seeded with this good microbiome, you're far more likely to experience allergies, eczema, asthma, obesity. So a lot of C-section babies, unfortunately, do have a tendency to be allergic to everything, and it's sad that women aren't informed. I think if more women were informed of this, they might make a different decision. But again, it shouldn't ever be based on fear. Your decisions should be made from love. Now, if you do really want a C-section, or you have to have a C-section for whatever reason, it's worth noting that there are things you can do to help the microbiome. So you can roll up a gauze, like a tampon, and insert it into the vagina yourself. And when the baby's born, take it out and just rub it inside the baby's mouth and around its face. Breastfeeding, skin to skin contact, that will ensure that your baby gets the microbiome it needs. And this isn't to shame anyone that's had a C-section, because look, we're meant to learn from our past, and if you have a brief glance in the last 100 years of obstetrics, we know one thing: we don't bloody know enough. So in the 30s, they were giving every woman an x-ray on their pelvis to see how big their pelvis was, to see if they were able to give birth. That resulted in cancer of babies. And then we all know what happened with thalidomide. Then in the 90s, they were giving women a drug called Cytotec to induce labour from previous C-sections, and that ended up with thousands of dead babies and ruptured uteruses. And I'm sure I don't need to tell your audience the problem we've got now with the latest medical intervention. So, if we want to go forward in birth, we've got to go back. Yes, medical intervention is bloody brilliant when it's needed, but being used as a standard procedure for everyone who walks through the hospital doors is dangerous. It's very dangerous. And if we separate ourselves from our true nature, we're going to lose instinct. And I'm very, very sure that intelligence without wisdom is very dangerous. Working with both of them side by side is ideal. But If you're in your head all the time and you think, well, I've got to listen to this person, that person, where is the time to listen to yourself and connect with your intuition? I'm sure most of you watching can remember a time in your life where you've gone against your intuition, and you also will remember what the byproduct of that was. And childbirth, what better time to connect with yourself and remember who you are?
Yeah, it seems so interesting about that because people follow blindly what the health professionals always say every time. It was common knowledge that smoking, like doctors were promoting smoking back in the 50s, 60s, or whatever. It was just actively promoted. Now there are risks, and they're telling you the risks. So it's like they always say at that present moment that something is good for you or is fine, and then later on it always comes out that it's not good for you, and oops, and hope you guys forgot. But yeah, most people do, to be honest. I mean, I don't know how or why or what kind of like hypnosis it is, but like most people just forget that things were different when at
Isn't,
that specific time.
isn't that called fractionism? I think it's called fractionism. So it's techniques that abusive people use in relationships. So
Stockholm, isn't it?
kind
No.
of, it's not, no, Stockholm syndrome not the same. So it's what the abuser is doing. So you'll see governments doing this. They'll take something away from you and then they'll give it back. So they'll cause a problem, but they'll make the cure. So that, I think
Yeah.
that's called fractionism, but I'm not entirely sure. I think it is. So that's what abusers do. So they're the one person that can make you feel that bad, but also the one person that can make you feel that good. I think that's why we forget,
Yeah.
because they save the day.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
it's also worth pointing out, if you like the science, right, and you don't want to follow your instinct, cool, we can do that too, and we can show you how to do it. So, um, doctors, if they're going to be telling you to do something, you're going to assume that's based on evidence, right?
Hmm.
I hope.
Yeah, you would hope. Yeah, but
Yeah. Well, maternity care is as little as 8% category A evidence based. That's 8. So if you're being told you've got to have a C-section, you've got to be induced, you may want to ask to see the evidence. Now, it goes both ways. Sometimes the evidence doesn't actually show us what's actually happening. So, for example, um, it might say that if your waters break before labour, 70, no, 97% of women will have gone into labour within 72 hours. But that's not always the case. So you can't look at yourself as a statistic. You have to look at individual based care. And what about you is suggesting this is going to happen? What about you is suggesting you're going to get a temperature or there's going to be an infection, etc., etc.? So let's say, for example, a doctor or a midwife tells you you've got a big baby, so we're going to induce you. This is a very common one. Or if you'd gone to term, your baby would have been 9 pounds. So I've attended 11 pounders at home with no tear. So that means just that. Just say I'd just done one big baby. That doesn't mean to say that you're going to have problems, right? Now, it's all well and good listening to me and other people's different opinions, but if you're going to put weight in what the doctors say, you might want to write to them. You can write to your consultant midwife or the consultant obstetrician and say, thank you very much for offering an induction, because remember, everything you can accept or decline. But before I accept or decline, I have a few questions. Please, can you define a big baby? Are your gestational diabetes babies and big babies combined in the studies? The answer is yes, so therefore they can't separate the difference between a gestational diabetes baby and a big baby. What percentage of your babies who are induced end up in the NICU? Can a small baby experience a shoulder dystocia, so where they get stuck? Do you see? These are the questions you ask. You take the Socratic approach. So if you're going to put all your weight in what the doctors are saying, you're allowed to ask questions. You're not on trial. It's not up to you to prove your baby will come out naturally and your body won't fail you. It's up to them to prove your body will fail you. But most women don't realize this. They think they don't have a choice. It's almost like a implied it's law. I mean, it's not. And I highly advise every single woman to get this book, Am I Allowed by Beverly Beach. It's phenomenal. It will give you all the information you can need so you understand how to take approach. I also have written a book, When Push Comes to Shove's Guide to Social Services and How to Navigate the System. This has got template letters so you know how to take the Socratic approach and write the correct questions so you can get an outcome that is suitable for you. If you're asking the doctors evidence for big babies induction, small babies induction, they have to give you a response and they have to tell the truth. So if there's no evidence for what they're saying, they'll have to tell you that. And that's definitely the right approach to take. Is that from my experience, the Socratic method is the best form to get, and it has a very good outcome.
Yeah, I think it's like a condition. I've felt it where like you see like doctors, people in higher places, let's say, are like they have authority, and you kind of, due to I believe actually the educational system, you've kind of you bow down to it until you kind of know enough information, or you've kind of seen enlightenment to empower yourself with information to say no, they're just another individual who has read a book who have actually studied for 7 years, but they are reading off the same sheet as large institutions will feed that information. That's just one piece of information. That's not the whole spectrum of information that you can find. And I think that's where a lot of people have been conditioned to sort of bow down to these authority kind of figures and just take everything as gospel.
Well, that's the
Um,
Milgram effect, isn't it?
yeah,
You look up the Milgram experiment, how people will just do whatever authority tells them. We know what happens when
yeah,
when we do that.
yeah,
But yeah, no,
yeah,
you're right. It's a strange phenomenon, isn't it? And it is about the education system. But I've fell victim to that as well. But I think it's important to respect your individual path. Don't feel
yeah,
bad for not knowing it. You never at one point sat up at night writing notes how to screw up your life and your children's lives. No, you're doing the best you've got with the tools that you have at the time. So don't feel bad. Just adapt.
yeah, yeah. Keep learning. Get education in your specific like situation in life, and not just to outsource it to people who are in the know in quotation marks.
Oh, for sure. And I will spot on my loft. If someone comes to me and asks me to attend their birth, then I feel they're not taking responsibility and they want to hand it over to me. I can't. I will not attend because they're looking for blame. They're this is not a judgment. This is just my observation that this is a trauma response, and I'm I can help people as much as they want to be helped themselves. I can't take over their birth. I have no interest in taking over their birth. I'm not there to fix it. I'm there to hold space. I'm there to empower and to show women that they have this inner birthing goddess. I don't want to take anything from them. I'm not interested in going da 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 save the day. That's not my bag at all. If you want to do that, be a doctor. But it's it's interesting that you can sense when people are not willing to take responsibility. They might be on this awakening journey, but they haven't quite got to that point yet. And they're still in trauma and they're still having traumatic responses and reactions to things. So it's good for people to be very self aware, know their boundaries if they want to get into this work as well.
Hey guys, just wanted to let you know about the upcoming event you don't want to miss, Monerotopia 23, the People's Money event happening May 6th and 7th in Mexico City. Join Monero developers, privacy tech project contributors, cypherpunks, and free speech advocates for talks and workshops, including Monero 101 for beginners and advanced workshops for contributors. Plus, there will be an Adoption Alley section showcasing projects and companies that already currently accept Monero. Tickets are very affordable, starting at $99 for all 3 days, with a special $25 ticket for locals. Use promo code RENEGADE to get 10% off at monerotopia.com. Yeah, I wanted to touch on the medical system a little bit more, I just wanted from your side, like, why do you think this intervention has got to a point where it's like nearly every single birth at this point? I mean, I don't know the statistics. I'm just like, this is basically from me speaking to people, like, why has it become like this, like so promoted, or just so, I guess, normal or common, as your grandmother would say?
Fear. That's it.
Right.
Fear is the underlying issue, but the byproduct of fear will come. It will show its face in other ways. So money. There's if you think you live in the UK and it's all free and they can't possibly have a financial incentive, I'm afraid you're incorrect. You might want to have a look at the payment scheme. There's actually something that says from patient notes to pound notes, and you'll have a little code. And if you're high risk, so for example, the Care Commissioners Group will pay the NHS nearly £4,000 for every emergency caesarean section. Now, of course, they have to have that because C-sections cost more money, but there is earnings there to be had, and that's not your problem. You can take responsibility for your birth. You can go elsewhere. You wouldn't go to a hairdresser and ask for a cut and blow dry and they say no, we only do blue rinses here. You don't go, sure, you go somewhere else. So you can do that. You don't have to, their statistics, their outcomes, their agendas are not your business. You can do what you want. I mean, and I don't know anywhere where it's illegal to free birth, as in unassisted birth. I know plenty of countries which it's illegal to attend a home birth. In Dubai and Colombia, it's illegal, you can't do that. But to have a free birth and unassisted birth, I'm not aware of any countries that you can't do that. There are human rights, but the other reason I think it's become so over medicalized is, okay, well, C-sections are safer than they used to be. It used to take ever such a long time to get a baby out via C-section, but because the methods have become safer, the practice is quicker, people have seen it as an alternative rather than a worst case scenario. So that I think they just trust the medical system, but they don't see the negative effects it has on. We don't even have a long-term data to see what goes on with induction of labour. There's speculation that it could cause potentially autism. We don't know. We don't know. If we don't know enough, maybe we should take a step back and let nature take over unless it's needed. The thing is, birth is a natural process that will very occasionally need medical intervention. It's not a medical event that will happen naturally if you're lucky. I can promise you that. And I'm not here to say that birth is inherently safe, because it's not. Birth is as safe as life. But you have a choice. You could sit in all day if you want, terrified to go outside just in case you get hit by a bus. Or you could live your life in the present moment and do what you feel to do. Same with birth. Just follow your instinct. I mean, what next? We're going to all have to go to hospital to have a poo.
It seems like we're not far from that, I guess. I mean,
No,
I,
no.
I don't even think that's out of them. I mean, yeah, I think it's so deep actually how far it goes, because I actually think that the whole system, the whole society in general has lost contact, lost connection with the either God, let's say God, energy, whatever, spirit. It's lost complete contact with that. I mean, we're seeing that decline quite evidently now, in my opinion. And then that induces fear, and then that fear has accumulated into basically a lot of people who are just hypochondriacs now, and it's not out of like, I don't like again to say I'm judging those people, because I was that person. Like while COVID, like right at the beginning of COVID, I like felt some breathing issues, and I was like, oh, I've got to go to the hospital. Like, I was literally like that only like for 2-3 years ago, and then like obviously slowly I've been like, what the hell's happening really? And then and I get it. I think it's like that fear of death or pain or fear of everything is accumulating. And I think that it's an interesting stat that I saw. I think it was 80%, something like that. 80% of your negative thoughts of fear or of things that actually will never happen. So they actually never happen. Those scenarios in your head that you are fearing never happen. And then out of the last 20%, I think it was like another 80% of those, or 90%, were like situations that weren't like terrible, but the people actually said that they were, something that they learned from, experiences that they needed, or they had, it was something of a learning process that actually helped them grow. So it's just interesting that basically most of those negative fear thoughts actually never occur, or were never that bad in the first place, if they did occur. So it's just
I'm glad you mentioned that, because that's an important point. Like, all you've got for the rest of your life is this moment. Okay, the future and the past don't even exist except for in your head. Now, look at animals and how they give birth. They don't go, oh shit, I'm not dilated enough. Oh no, this is going to be ages. And I don't think any animals go about the place getting vaginal exams. For God's sake, I mean, that's an obsession in itself. Unless your practitioner believes your cervix is a crystal ball, you might want to ask them what they're doing and who is it for. Because if you get examined at 4 in the afternoon and you're 5 centimeters, that tells them nothing. That just tells you where you are in that point in time. You can go from 5 to 10 in 10 minutes or 5 hours or even longer. So ask them why they're doing it. Who is it for? Now, when you watch animals, they're in the present moment. They nest, they go into a dark place, just as we would if we actually follow our instincts. Now, I always say to women, when you are giving birth, you need to be the epitome of a human being, not a human doing, not a human becoming. You just need to be in the present moment and surrender and get in touch with your body. Because if you're sitting there in your head worrying about how dilated you are, and a very fair concern is, I'm on the clock, I've got to give birth by this time, or they're going to come with their scissors and their knives. Um, then, yeah, that could be very anxiety inducing if you're in your head. If you are brave enough to give birth in hospital and you have got enough mind mastery to create such a protective bubble around you that doesn't matter what you're going to hear in the background, you're going to ignore them. Good for you. And tell me more. Tell me how you've done it. If you want to birth in the woods with a mariachi band playing, or in a pool with a dolphin, you should do it. As long as you are following your heart and making choices from love, not fear. And I'll give you an example of what I mean by that. There's been a huge rise in free birth since the lockdowns. Now, I'm all fine for that. If you want a free birth your baby and have no medical intervention, cool, you're a human being. If you're in a coma, your head needs no input, you just give birth. It's a physiological process. But, big but, why are you deciding to do it? Are you wanting to free birth because you have confidence in your body and utter faith? Or are you doing it because you're scared of the hospital? They are two very different reasons. And if you're choosing it out of fear, expect to see fear show up in one form or another. Maybe meconium. Maybe, I don't know. There could be a million variations of what could happen. But just ask yourself, why am I doing this? And there's a very easy recipe to remember. If you feel safe and loved and wise, give birth there or with whoever makes you feel those things. That's it. That's all you need for a good birth. Feel safe and loved and wise. Don't stay at home just because you're afraid of the hospital. That's coercion. That's not choice. Get in contact with us. We can help you either navigate the system alongside it, have a toe in, or leave it entirely. But we listen to you. This is women centered care. We sit on your sofa and say, what do you want? Not, you're having this, you're too old, you're too fat, you're too thin, you've got to have this, you've got to have this medication and that because your body's going to fail you. Mm-mm. Even if you're the most high risk woman I've ever met, and I think you're going to take responsibility for your birth and you trust in yourself, I will attend your birth. But we're here to help navigate and help support emotionally and physically, not to take over.
Key takeaway is empowerment to the woman and the parents. That is
Yeah,
the
it
key.
changes the whole family.
Yeah, yeah.
And I train people to do this. If we need better birth in the world, we need better birth support. So you can come and train with me, and we do it all online. We've got a 4-day doula course or a 52 module birth attendant course, which is a year. Or if you're an expectant parent and you don't want to go into that much detail, we've got a childbirth masterclass, and we give examples of common emergencies that they scare you about, like placental abruption, they'll say, well, we don't know why that happens. I don't know why they're saying they don't know why it happens, because there's very clear reasons why placental abruption happens, and it's to do with nutrition. But then again, they spend absolutely no money teaching anyone about nutrition. So I'll just touch on that very, very briefly. A placental abruption is where the placenta separates from the uterine wall. And obviously, a baby cannot survive without the placenta, because the placenta provides the baby with oxygen. So, unless you've been kicked by a donkey, you may be led to believe that it's a complete mystery. It's not a complete mystery. When you're pregnant, your blood volume needs to expand by up to 60% in order to keep that placenta functioning and to get oxygen to the baby. There's a pool of blood behind your placenta, and that pool of blood will give the baby everything it needs and take all the and you've got like veins and arteries. They do all the normal things that a body would do just with a baby. So you've got blood that pumps to and away and takes out their waste products as well. In a nutshell, I've probably explained that terribly, but if you go on my Instagram, I've got a really good post and I've put everything in the right order. So this pool of blood needs to get bigger as the baby expands. If you do not eat enough protein in order to cause more blood to expand your blood volume, the placenta will get weaker and weaker and will eventually separate from the uterine wall. That's why placental abruptions cause. It's not a mystery. It's not, oh, that was strange. It's a bit Russian roulette whether that's going to happen to you or not. It's rubbish. That's usually the reason for placental abruption: poor nutrition and everything else. So, for example, endometriosis, preeclampsia, gestational diabetes. It's all down to nutrition. You have to be eating the correct protein amount, at least 100 grams a day, to keep up with the expanding blood volume. And I would urge any woman watching this to look up the brewer's diet. It's a fantastic diet to eat, very Mediterranean. But protein, protein, protein is so, so important. And if they're saying, oh, we think you've got gestational diabetes, go on the brewer's diet. They don't ever say, here's how you can prevent it, or even here's how you can start to cure it. It's, let's whip you in for an operation. Let's whip you in for an induction.
Yeah, because it's free basically, free cures, which wouldn't profit any of the medical institutions, let's say. But I just think that that's quite an interesting link, because I believe the nutrition of people in general in society has decreased in regards to their eating habits, and that may be causing the issues with people being more medically inclined during birth, potentially due to
Yeah,
cesareans, and that could be
that's a big smoke screen. Well, what are we actually? Are our bodies failing us? Are we evolving for our bodies to fail us, or are we eating so much shit? And there's only three reasons you'll ever get ill. Only three: deprivation, so you deprive your body of something; toxicity, you put something in your body that shouldn't be there; or trauma. That's it. And it's on a level of mind, body, and soul.
yeah.
So, what are you poisoning your mind with, or depriving your mind of, or how have you been traumatized? Same goes for the body. Same goes for the soul. I'm assuming you wash your body every day to get rid of yesterday's dirt. Do you do the same for your soul? Do you meditate? Do you practice mindfulness, or whatever you want to call it? It's resistance training. You've got to work on all three aspects. And if you overindulge in one, or you deprive yourself of one aspect, be it mind, body, or soul, we know what happens if you overindulge in the body and the mind, the same soul. So I think people need a very good understanding of how nutrition combined with healthy mind exercises, staying away from toxic people, surrounding yourself with like-minded people, practicing meditation, or whatever makes you feel good spiritually, be it prayer, whatever. It's so important. And if you are short of any of these three elements or components, your body will be at dis-ease. It's as simple as that. So understand what your body's asking you to put into you. So nutrients, like they'll say you've got to take all these pregnancy prenatal vitamins. They don't tell you what's in them, because if you were going to start taking anything that you see, nice cheap prenatal vitamins or supplements, look at the ingredients. If they end in ose or ace, throw them away, because essentially what you're doing is giving yourself very expensive weed. They don't do anything. In fact, they do the complete opposite. If you've got fillers and binders within your supplements, what it does, it rips through the mitochondria of your cell and it rips out all your zinc. And if you've got no zinc, you can't absorb the vitamins that you're trying to put into yourself in the first place. It's alarming that people don't know this. But how can they know this if they're not taught this? You're only as informed as the information that you've got in front of you, right? And if you had a quick Google, for example, I don't know, you were pregnant and you got a breech baby. You Google breech baby, it will say C-section. Well, that's nonsense. Now, what isn't nonsense is if you don't have a practitioner that understands physiological breech birth, run a mile. That's not safe. But to say categorically to a woman, you have to have a C-section because your baby's breech, it's a lie. It's not even based on any evidence. It's because they don't understand the hands-off method. They don't understand physiological birth, and nor should they, right? Doctors are there for medical emergencies. You wouldn't go to a mechanic to get your nails painted. You wouldn't go to an obstetrician for a natural birth. It's like going to a prostitute for a cuddle. It's completely pointless. You're not going to get anything out of that. So go to a natural birth practitioner if you want to learn about natural and physiological birth. Lecture over.
That was great. I mean, yeah, I think it's so obvious that I now believe that whatever information you consume will consume you. So you've got to make sure that that information is either helping you get empowered or positive. Yes, you're going to not hear some things that are positive all the time, but just make sure like you're not just, like you said, around toxic people all the time, or you're just watching dramas that are just spewing out all kinds of scenarios that you will then believe that will happen in your life, and then all of a sudden you're fearful, and then all that will come up in your life as well. Just watch and try and improve the quality of content that you actually take in, because that's more important than people actually think, or people just don't notice, and I didn't notice that either. You just binge watch all kinds of crap and you wouldn't think anything's happening to you, but there is a lot happening there. So yeah, that's great. Yeah, yeah, yeah. I think the more like empowering content that's out there, the better. So I'm just literally trying to get people like yourself and others who are just doing great things, and just like I was just seeing nothing in regards to many issues, and I just felt like I had to bring it on myself to just let this information be heard, like many others have as well over the last couple of years. So yeah, thank you very much, Nickita. Where can people find you and your work if they want to
Sure.
get in contact?
It's when push comes to shove.co.uk. If you're on Telegram, just search Awakened Pregnancy and Birth, but you just go directly to my website, scroll down to the bottom, and you'll see the social media links. We are launching a new website soon, but until then, everything's still there. If you want to train with us, send me an email. If you want to do the masterclass, and this is really important to remember. So we want to provide care to everyone, regardless of their financial situation. So if you are on a low income, we have an access fund. So that means we can pay towards your care, your one-to-one care throughout pregnancy and birth, so you don't have to go without. Also, we do payment plans for courses. We have 50% off the childbirth masterclass if you're on universal credit or welfare. So no matter what your situation, just please feel free to reach out because we will help everyone. There is so much free content on my YouTube, Instagram. So just go to the website, find the social media links that you align with, give it a click, and then give me a shout if you need anything. And advocacy as well, we really help with advocacy. So social services, etc., etc. Just give us a call, we'll help you.
Nice one, nice one. We'll have all the links in the show notes. So yeah, check out the new website, renegadelifestyle.net, and remember to share and subscribe to the podcast if you know someone that might find this of value. Definitely share that to them. Thank you very much, Nickita, for joining.
Thank you
It's
very
been a
much for
pleasure.
having me. Thank you.
Thank you. Peace and love to you all. Thanks for listening.